Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Art 186, Computer Graphics with Adobe Illustrator. Um, Today, I'm going to begin Lesson 12, which covers in the introduction of brush tools in Illustrator. They are tools, there's a variety of them we'll cover shortly, 5 different tools. One, in fact, allows you to take existing artwork and turn it into a brush. And that's the art brush tool. There's others that allow you to turn them into borders. There are others that allow you to create kind of calligraphic effects and so on and so forth. Lots of different kinds of brushes that can really enhance your artwork and give it, I don't want to say a more natural look, but using creating artwork that was created with traditional tools, it gives you the opportunity to do something that's more like that. Clearly stylized, but again, provides a nice contrast. So what we're looking at here is the finished lesson. And just as a side note, I'm just going to walk you through the basics today and not go through the entire lesson. And the reason that I'm doing that is because we are way ahead of the game. We still have several weeks left of the semester, and we're already on lesson 12. And we're only going to lesson 14. We could go a little bit further with the lessons, but you will not be responsible for them. And there's other things that I'd like to probably touch on as well, maybe showing you some videos of more advanced tools and techniques that I think would be beneficial for you to look at. Anyway, this is the finished approach, and let's analyze it really quickly. As you can see, that there is, zoom in a little bit, and it's really taxing my computer. So maybe I shouldn't do that. Anyway, it's going to be hard for you to see because it's pushing my system and user to the limits here in my activity monitor. But as you can see here under the with the word pure mental, that's a calligraphic approach where we have a calligraphic tools that allow us to do that. You'll also notice the leaves here attached to a stem. Well, that is a custom brush that we can make by making it our artwork. You can see around the triangle, we have custom brush that's used for borders. And you'll see that I already have one of the library options up for borders, geometric borders. That can also, we can create our own, our own border, which is used around here. That's this little leaf tool right here. And then you can see in the background, there's some really soft, almost watercolor look appearance. Well, that's can be done here with a soft fan brush. So that's what we're going to work with. And we'll do that on Tuesday. I just want to show you on a blank canvas what some of the tools are and what they do, where you can find some additional brushes and that sort of thing. And again, it's just a basic overview of the brushes, and I encourage you to look at them seriously, especially if you haven't finished the Tokidoki assignment. Maybe you can use it in a selective way, not entirely as for your complete project, but to use it as an accent or as a means of contrast and texture, that sort of thing. So this is the end approach, or the end document. And here's what we start with, just some basic line work, and that's about it. And you can see that they've already applied a brush to this one stroke. So that's typically what happens when you're using the brush tools. They are applied to strokes, and that you really shouldn't, I mean, you can have a fill, but if you want it to look like have a calligraphic look, or you want it to have a individual brush stroke, then you just want the stroke, no fill. Okay. So that's what we have here. And I will go through all of this in its entirety next Tuesday. But what I have here is a start file here. We can get going with this. And let's go over these one by one. So I have pulled off the brush tab. I believe it was originally attached to swatches and symbols. So I can put it back in here like so. And when this is closed, I don't know that you will see your brushes, but if I click here and I can click, and there are my brushes. These are the default brushes that come. I mean, there's many that come with Illustrator, but those that you don't have to create yourself or hunt and peck for. They're just default brushes. You also need to use the brush tool over here to the left. And something else that I want to cover that's hidden underneath that is the blob brush tool, which is really pretty cool. If you want to get away from using the pen tool, the curvature tool, things like that, the geometric form or shapes, then the blob brush tool might be for you. It works really nicely. But we're going to start by using the paintbrush tool. So we see at the top here, we have a series of brushes. Some are simple round brushes. It's a 15-point round. This one here is a 5-point round. We have an oval brush, which is more of a calligraphic approach, and that's what we're using in here. Here's another oval brush. It's a 3-point, 5-point, and then we have another round brush at the end here. Okay, so that's a touch calligraphic tool. Okay, and then we have the flat brush here. I'm going to start by showing you the oval brush in a minute. Here is your basic stroke here. So it would be, it's no different than picking the pen tool or the curvature tool. I mean, it doesn't matter which one you pick. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make sure that I have no fill so that it doesn't fill, and make sure I'll start with a black stroke. It's that simple. And I'm just going to create a simple curve like so. Okay, hold down the command key and end it. Now I'm going to select. And now with that, oh shoot, let's go back here. With that path selected, if I want to apply a stroke to it of some sort, a brush stroke, I can do that. So let's just start with the calligraphic. And it doesn't look all that different from what you would normally see, but we can make it go from thick to thin a little bit better. In fact, there we go. It's looking a little bit more like a calligraphic brush stroke. We can go ahead too, and we can double click on this and we can enlarge it a little bit. We can also change the angle of it. So by double clicking on that brush, you bring up dialog boxes. We can change the size of it. So let's go ahead and change the overall size. Instead of 5 pixels, let's make it maybe 10 or 20. And now you can see enhanced with the size that it even looks, you even get more of a sense of a flat or rounded brush, where you change the direction of it and the thickness of it by how you hold the brush. Okay, so we can change the angle of it, we can change the thickness of it, and it applies it to a stroke. And if I click OK, so I'm going to go ahead and say apply to, it always asks you with all of the brushes, do you want to apply it to the strokes or do you want to leave the strokes? I'm going to apply it to the stroke, just for the heck of it. Okay, and notice that the brush has changed in here. I have changed it. If you want to add a brush or copy a brush, you can always do that. Now what I can do with that brush or that path selected, if I want to go back to just a basic stroke, I can do that. And it takes it all the way back to a 1-point stroke. Now, if I want to apply a different kind of brush to it, so we started with a calligraphic brush. If we apply more of an art kind of brush to it, then this now looks more like a piece of charcoal that made that, or kind of a dry brush. And again, if I go ahead and I double click on it and I want to make that a little bit thicker, instead of a thin kind of a brush, I can do that. You can, again, the width right now is fixed. I can change the thickness of it here, or I can scale it proportionately. And notice what it's doing here. So this is what they give us from the onset, this kind of brush. So by selecting the same path, applying a different brush to it, you get a totally different effect. Okay, so let's go back, and I'm going to undo again. And I can keep undoing and undoing until we go all the way back to whichever. We can select the next one, which is the divider that they use for this particular piece. And notice that what we have at either end is a little flourish. And all of these brushes can be created on your own, or they can be created. When I deselect that, you can see a little bit better. You no longer really see the path underneath, but you see this nice elegant stroke with little flourishes at either end. Okay. And then the next one is a fan brush. And we apply that, and that has more of a brushy kind of feel. And the thing that's nice about these is that if you wanted to create an entire illustration using these, you could. Now, it gets pretty complicated looking when you're done with it. And there is one example that I have on my student work where she did this for the mask assignment, in fact. Let me go back here and let's select the brush, make sure that this is selected, and I'm going to go ahead here. It's selected. Again, I'm kind of maxing out my computer here. So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, come on. Yeah, it's going to be really sluggish. So for you, that's why one reason I don't want to do too much of this today is because when I broadcast to you and I'm recording live video, it really takes up a lot of the computer processor power. So anyway, you can see that it takes a while for it to catch up. Since you guys won't be broadcasting anybody, it should go in pretty much, there we go, live mode. And you can just keep drawing and drawing and drawing. And, you know, if you have an underlined sketch, you can draw by hand on top of that. There are also some brushes that work well with Wacom tablets. So let me undo a few of these. Let's go back to here. And then we have, what we have next here are, it's a pattern brush that work really well for borders. And that's what you see down here, the borders and geometric. I've pulled that off. So here are some of the 5 basic examples that we have of the kinds of brushes. We have some calligraphic brushes. Here's the basic line, which really isn't a brush. We have one more that's similar to charcoal or a painterly approach. We have others that these are kind of border brushes, these two. And then these are more art brushes. Actually, this one here is more of an art brush where we've taken, and when I'll show you in a minute how to create an art brush. So there we have, you can create a myriad of effects with this. So I'm going to close that. And I'm going to come back and show you down here. When you select each of these, we have a library, just as we've had with patterns and we've had with gradients and other things. If I click here, you'll see that there under saved brushes, there are arrow brushes, there are artistic brushes from which to choose. And you can see that we have the calligraphic, we have charcoal and pencil, artistic ink, paint brushes, you name it, watercolor brushes. We have different border brushes, and that's the one that I have down below. That's the geometric one. We have bristle brushes, which are really pretty cool, decorative brushes, and those get into some scatter brushes that we haven't really covered yet, which are really pretty cool. And again, each one has a very specific purpose, and you may or may not have need to use them that often. Here are some image brushes. You can go to the image brush library. And here's, if you happen to have a Wacom tablet, here's for the 6D that's in 6 dimensions: the pressure, the round, by spinning the brush and changing the angle of the brush and the different coordinates will give you 6 different dimensions from which to control the quality of the brush. And if you want to bring in other third-party libraries, you can. And if you have your own user-defined brushes, you can do that as well. So there's these huge library of brushes that you have to choose from. And I encourage you to explore some of them. Many of them, in all the years that I've used this, I haven't used, and I do keep adding to them. Okay. The next little one over here is the library panel. So if you are connected to Adobe and you're using Adobe Library, then you would click on this and it switches to library. I don't have any of them saved there. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the properties panel. If you have used a brush, so if we come back here once again, and I have the brush tool and I click and I drag to use that brush, later on, if you wanted to remove that brush altogether and go back to a basic shape, then you make sure, or basic path, you select the path, and then you have the option here with this button to remove the brush stroke. There you go, and you just go back to a basic brush or path. Okay, so let's undo that again. Let's bring that back, and now I have these other options over here. When I select this, this will give me whatever options there are for this specific brush. It will bring up the panel for that. So you can see for this particular one, which is more of a calligraphic or art brush, I should say, that looks kind of like charcoal or whatever. There's lots of options here. We can work with a fixed size. We can also work with a proportional size. Okay. We can also flip along X, Y, or Z, the X and Y coordinates. So notice that it's going in the opposite direction now as I click this. And I can flip along. There you go. This would be along the Y. This one would be along the X. Okie doke. Sometimes you see a difference, sometimes you don't. Then you have options of changing the tinted color. So we can come back with this, and when you do change the color of a brush, you change the stroke, not the fill. So if I click here, and I say that I want to use tints, I can go ahead and I can change the color of this. Like so, let's say I want to, let's go ahead and click. And let's pick from one of these colors. Let's pick red here. And click OK. And now let's preview it. Oh, come on. I want to select a tint. Let's try the purple. Why aren't you allowing me to do that? Oh, I see. We want hue shift, or tints and shades. So I'm not even using it correctly. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And so it's allowing me to make the changes to it. So now when I click OK, and I come back with my brush color, I'll click from here. Let's pick a red. Now, or a pink, it changes it to pink. And that's it. Okay, so you can make them whatever color you want, your choice. Now, those are some of the brushes. Let me show you how to use the basic brushes and the basic tools. If you want a custom brush here, then that's what we select from right here, a new brush. And if you want to delete a brush, then you select this one right here, the little trash can. So let me start with basic calligraphic brushes. I'm going to use this one again, just to show you how it works. Again, I'm going to go back with the brush tool. And it works much better when you are working with a Wacom tablet. Right now, I'm working with my mouse, and it is sort of like working with a bar of soap in my hand. It's not all that comfortable. So let me change the angle of the brush a little bit. And click OK. And now I want to get more of a thick and thin approach. And I'm not getting that. So by changing the angle of that, I kind of goofed. Let's try that again. Let's while this is selected, let me go ahead again and let's see if we can't bring up that little dialog box. And let's with preview turned on and off, let's go ahead and adjust the angle again. We don't need to change the size. And you can see that it goes from thick to thin. And if I even go a little bit less, try to hit a happy medium here. Yeah, there you go. Okay, thick to thin. And again, if you want a variation or randomize the strokes, you can. If you want them to be fixed, they can. Right now, that's what it is. You can randomize it. You can base it on pressure. Use a stylus wheel, the tilt, the bearing, the rotation. All of these pertain to using a Wacom tablet. But what we have right now, or what I'm using right now, as I said, I'm using the mouse. So that's the calligraphic brush. The next one is an art brush. So that's what this one is here. That's what this one is here as well. Now you can take any, what is it? You can take any pattern and turn it into an art brush. And that's basically what we're doing. Let me go back to the start file here to show you here. That's what we're taking with this, and we're turning this into an art brush. Okay, so we've got that illustration. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go back to my start file here, and I'm going to deselect, and I'm going to paste it. So it's quite large in here. I can go ahead and scale it down. So this is nothing more than a little illustration. Okay, now what I need to do is to turn this into an art brush is I need to go ahead and I need to first go to my swatch panel, and I need to drag this into it, the swatch panel, and turn it into a pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect. I'm going to select the original one, deselect. And now what I can do is if I want to, I can go ahead and I can create a new brush. Let me just go ahead again. No, I don't even have to do that. I'm going to go ahead and undo, bring it back, and I can now go ahead and select a brand new brush. It's more for pattern brushes that you have to turn them into. I want a brand new brush. Come on, there we go. And I want it to be an art brush. As soon as I select art brush, you'll notice that we have 5 different kinds of brushes here. I click OK. And now it's been added. And it gives you all these options here. Do you want this to be fixed 100%? You want it to be scaled proportionately? Do you want it to stretch to fit a certain length? You want it to stretch between guidelines? You have all of these options available for you. More than I think you want to really want to know. So now I can click OK. Let's deselect. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select this path again. And I'm going to select our art brush. And you can see what it does. It takes this brush that was, or this little illustration of these leaves that was straight, and it applies it to the stroke, and it bends it along those lines. So if I just use a simple straight stroke, or if I use the brush tool here, and I just click and I drag diagonally, you can see that it follows the curvature of the stroke. Pretty cool. So it doesn't take much to turn some artwork into an artist brush. And as I said, there are many that are available for you in the libraries, but that's the way that works. Similarly, the next one that we have are bristle brushes. So let me deselect that and let me go ahead and go to libraries. And let's look at bristle brushes. I'm going to look at the bristle brush library here. And that brings that up. And let's pick a nice big one here, a 6. And notice what that looks like. Really, really nice. It has a nice kind of more artsy brush-like feel to it. And again, if you're painting with this and you don't have to broadcast and you're not using up a lot of processor on your machine trying to broadcast live, you can just click and drag, or you can use a brush and it will create some really nice effects. Okay, so that's the next one. And we have lots of examples of bristles that you can pick from. The next one is a pattern brush. Now, pattern brush, what you can do is you can, and I'll show you what we're doing with the start file here, is that we do need to take, again, a little illustration that we've made, and I'll zoom in here so we can see this a little bit better. And this does have to be turned into a pattern. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to drag it into the swatch panel, and it automatically turns it into a pattern. Now I'll deselect the shape. And now if I want to create a new brush and I want to create a pattern brush, I'll go ahead and I'll click the plus sign now. And what I want, and notice that it limits my, my options here. So I want to create a pattern brush, and I'm going to click OK. And another dialog box is going to pop up. And it's going to tell me, what do I want the corners to be? What do I want the straightaways to be? The inside corners, the outside corners, and the end caps. So for right now, I'm going to select the straightaways. And you'll notice that there are a number of patterns that are already available. I'm going to pick the one that I just created. And it gives us a preview of what it's going to look like. Notice nothing exists on the corner. So instead, if I click here on the corner and I select this again, now you see that for the corner. If I want it to be a different kind of corner, then we have that. So for every pattern that you have available to you, you can select different corners. Now that's the outside corner. Now look at, we have one for the inside corner. So now if I go ahead and I click here again, let's go ahead and select that one again. And now that fits the corner. I don't have an end cap either. So if I want this to have an end cap, I would start here and I would have to select, let's select this one again. And if I have the end piece here, now with some of these, you don't need all of these. Come on. There we go. Okay, there we go. There we go. So now when I go ahead and I use it, I'm going to click OK for a brand new brush. I can come back over here. Actually, I should have created that. Let me go ahead and use that here and using the brush tool. And actually, I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use the brush tool, but first I'm going to create a basic shape here. I'm just going to create a rectangle. So this is click and drag like so. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this border to it. So it makes, you know, short work of something that normally would be fairly complex. Okay, so that's what a pattern fill does. And then the scatter brush, let's find some scatter brushes to use. I'm going to go back to my untitled piece here. And we're going to go in the library. And I'm going to look up some scatter brushes. Where are they? Decorative, decorative scatter. So let's see what we have here. There we go. So here we have some that are kind of cool, and there are a variety of different collections that they have for us to use. So let's go ahead and select this shape once, this stroke once again. And let's apply a scatter brush to it, and you'll see what it does. I'm going to go ahead and select, let's select this one just to see what happens. Now notice that they vary in size. They vary in their placement, so they aren't directly on the path itself, but they veer from it slightly. The same with these little polka dot shapes. And remember, every time you use one of these, it will be added to your brush file or your brush library for this particular file. Again, depending on how you know, what kind of effect you want. Notice how this one really veers from the stroke itself. And this can all be controlled. Again, if we either select, double click here, or we click over here. Okay, so with this selected, and I click on this little button right here, it will bring up the stroke and the scatter options. And there's lots of options available to us. Again, how much do you want to randomize this? How much do you want spacing to be? Right now it's 200%. If I reduce this like so to 48, 45%, and I click the preview, notice how much tighter it is. Okay. We can also consider rotation. For these particular shapes, rotation won't matter, but several years ago when they introduced this tool, they had a tree and they used some leaves that they created for the brush. And they randomized the color, they randomized the position, the rotation, and the scale of them to give you a pretty nice effect. So you wouldn't have to place the individual leaves on the tree, but just simply create a few strokes. And before you know it, you'd have an entire tree filled with leaves. So that's what that one uses. This is the decorative scatter brush. And again, they each have their own, properties, their own advantages, disadvantages. I'm going to go back a few steps. There we go. So we're back to that. So those are some of the basic brushes. Those are how they're used, how you can create your own. You can customize or you can edit existing brushes. In addition to that, what I wanted to show you is the blob brush. And I really think this is pretty cool. So let's start with, I'm going to deselect, and I'm going to create a basic shape. So I'm going to make sure that I have the pink fill, and you need a solid fill for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, and maybe I'm just going to go ahead and select the ellipse tool here. And I'm going to make an ellipse. Okie doke. And now what I want to do is I want to add to that. Okay. What I can do is I can select the brush underneath the brush tool. I'm going to select the blob tool and making sure that I have the same color, and it has to be the same color in the fill. Now I can come back here and let's put caps lock on so I can see the sides of the brush. If I want to make the brush bigger, you tap on the right brace. Okay, and now I can click and I can drag on here. Now I'm going to see if this worked. I'm going to hit Command Y. And notice what it did. It changed the configuration of the circle into this newly shaped form that I created with the brush. So I can go ahead and only hit Command Y again to bring back the preview. And let's make the brush a little bit bigger, but that's going to be a little bit more taxing on my computer. But this is a way that you can paint and fill in areas by hand and not have to really worry about your accuracy using the pen tool or the curvature tool. Now, normally this would be a difficult shape. I mean, it's just a big curly kind of blob here, but it would be more difficult to create on your own. But what you can do now is that if I switch, whoops, I didn't want to do that. Let me undo that, because now when I hit Command Y, oh, there we go. Notice what I have. This should be, with a blob brush, it should be a fill that was used, not the stroke. But anyway, so far so good, it worked. Now I've created this path, and if I select the path, you'll see all the anchor points on this thing. So you can simplify, you can change each of the anchor points and edit them. You can come back with the curvature tool, you can come back with the pen tool, and you can make any additions or changes that you want to it. Now that's one of the advantages to using the blob brush. In addition to using the blob brush though, so let's take this back to Command Y here. If you want to erase any parts, then that also works really nicely too. So I can come back with this and I can select the eraser tool. Where's our eraser tool? It's hit right here. Okay, so here's my eraser. And again, if you put caps lock on, you'll be able to see the size of it a little bit better. I'll make a bigger eraser here so you can see what I'm doing. And if I come back, we've already used this in one of our other pieces. I can cut that off. I can also create little holes in here in this shape. Again, and again, when I go ahead and I hit Command Y, to actually look at the path underneath, you can see what I have. Very nice, really, really nice. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to show you, since I've introduced some of the basic features of the brush tools, is to show you some examples of what can be done with the brush tools. So I'm going to bring up let's come down here. That's not what I wanted. Here we go. I'm going to come back to here and I'm going to, so here's my website. And there's one example that I have on here that a student did that used the brush tool that I thought was really superb. So I'll go to Kirk's classes. It has a nice brushy kind of feel, kind of artistic. Now this is an example from the first assignment where they're very precise. And that's typically what we see here. But if I go to this one right here, to get most of these effects inside here, this nice loose kind of brushy approach, she used the brush tool. Okay, now it's combined with, using the pen tool, the curvature tool, and others, but to get this effect in here, to get this kind of fill, she used the brush tool. So really, really nice. It has a really nice feel to it, very loose, something that maybe you would do if you were working with traditional media. Another thing that I wanted to show you are some examples of, where was it here? Where did they go? I wanted to show you examples. Let's look from here. No, it's not there. Oh, I just had it up here. I've got such a busy screen here. That's not what I wanted either. Where did you go? Oh, here we go. No, that's not it. Oh, here, yes, it is. That's where I wanted it. So I just did a simple Google search and hunted in here, and I said, using Pinterest, I looked for Adobe Illustrator artwork. And again, you can find some examples where they used the brush tool pretty extensively in combination with some of the more traditional brushes like the curvature tool, like the pen tool. But to get some really, really nice, some beautiful, beautiful effects here. Okay. So these are worth looking into. I encourage you, especially when you're working on your final project, to explore some of these. Some of them are pretty straightforward. Some of them do look somewhat realistic. I don't think it's, well, it depends on what you want to do. I like this approach to the illustration where there's a nice contrast from realistic to simplified, stylized using the pen tool, going from photographic approach to very stylized approach. That makes it worthwhile. But again, lots and lots of approaches to this. I encourage you to explore some of these on your own. Okay. And if you look carefully enough, there will be some tutorials if you're wondering. One that was very popular for a while was creating kind of a polygonal approach, like this one here. Oh, no, that wasn't the one. Let me go outside of that. But that is a good example. It was used for portraiture, this one here. So it's taking a traditional photograph and breaking it down into three-pointed polys. Very stylized approach, but really, really nice. I guess it was, very popular for a while and used quite a bit, but not so much anymore. I guess people kind of got tired of it. Anyway, so again, lots and lots of approaches that you can take. And I think to a large extent, using the brush tool will enable you to try some really different approaches, some different things with all of this. Okay, so that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. And then next Tuesday, I'll go over the lesson step by step if you think that will help you. If not, you're free to do it on your own. Okay, explore some of these brushes, the scatter brushes, the bristle brushes, the border brushes. And you can always edit those and change those out and create new custom brushes from all of those. So you're really not limited at all. Okie doke. Any questions before we leave today? No? Comments? Anything that you would like me to see? No? Okay. Then I'm going to pause the recording